Exodus 23 verse 25. But you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will remove sickness from your midst. Exodus 23 verse 25 is one of those verses that immediately catches our attention because of the wonderful promises it contains. Blessing, provision, health. Who wouldn't want that? Yet, to understand what this verse means for us today, we need to look at both its original context and the timeless principles behind it. The original context. God spoke these words to the nation of Israel after delivering them from slavery in Egypt. The Israelites were entering into a covenant relationship with him. God had chosen them to be his people, and he gave them instructions on how they were to live in the land he was bringing them into. The surrounding verses describe God's promises connected to Israel's obedience to the covenant. If they rejected idols and remained faithful to him, they would experience his care and protection in very practical ways. The command comes first. But you shall serve the Lord your God. Serving God meant more than attending religious ceremonies. It involved loyalty, worship, obedience, trust, and ordering every aspect of life around him. Israel was not to divide its allegiance between God and the false gods of the surrounding nations. Then came the promise, and he will bless your bread and your water. Bread and water represent the necessities of life. God promised to provide for his people's daily needs. Their sustenance would not merely be the result of favorable weather or successful farming techniques. It would be evidence of God's gracious hand upon them. Finally, and I will remove sickness from your midst. Under the covenant with Israel, God promised protection and blessing in ways that often included physical well-being. This was part of his special relationship with his covenant people as a nation. What does this mean for Christians today? Some people read this verse and conclude that if they serve God faithfully, they will never become sick or face hardship. However, the rest of Scripture shows that faithful believers can and do suffer illness. Consider Job. He was described as blameless and upright, yet endured tremendous suffering. Paul the Apostle spoke of a thorn in the flesh that God chose not to remove, 2 Corinthians 12 verse 7-9. Timothy apparently struggled with frequent ailments, 1 Timothy 5 verse 12. Faithfulness to God is not a guarantee of a trouble-free life. However, the principle behind Exodus 23 verse 25 remains deeply relevant. Point 1. God deserves exclusive worship. Our culture has idols too. Most people do not bow before carved statues, but many worship success, money, approval, comfort, pleasure, politics, relationships, or even themselves. Jesus taught that no one can serve two masters. God still calls his people to wholehearted devotion. The question for us is, who truly has first place in my life? If God only receives the leftovers of our time, energy, and affection, he is not being served as Lord. Point 2. God is our provider. Bless your bread and your water reminds us that every good gift ultimately comes from God. The food in our refrigerator, the roof over our heads, the strength to work, the people who love us, the opportunities we receive. In a world filled with anxiety over finances and uncertainty about the future, believers can remember that God knows our needs before we ask him. This does not eliminate responsibility. We still work, plan, save, and make wise decisions, but we do so recognizing that our ultimate security is found in God, not in our bank accounts. Point 3. God still cares about our health. While Christians are not promised freedom from all sickness in this life, God is not indifferent to our suffering. We are encouraged to pray for healing. We can seek medical treatment with gratitude. We can support and care for those who are ill. We trust God whether he heals immediately, gradually through medicine, or ultimately in eternity. One day, God will remove sickness completely. The final chapters of Scripture describe a future where pain, death, and disease will be no more. For believers, that hope is certain. Relevant for today. Exodus 23 verse 25 reminds us that serving God is not about empty ritual. It is about trusting the one who rescued us, putting him first, and depending on him daily. He invites us to worship him above every competing loyalty. He provides what we truly need. He walks with us in sickness and health, and he promises a future where every effect of sin will finally be undone. So today, whether you are thriving or struggling, healthy or sick, secure or uncertain, the invitation remains the same. Serve the Lord your God, trust his heart, depend on his provision, rest in his care. The God who cared for Israel in the wilderness is still faithful today, and those who belong to him never walk through life alone.